Hi, good afternoon. It's Natalie Rivage, and I'm really excited to have an opportunity to share my final reflections of the course. So, in reflection of my experience in my class, I'm going to first address some of the key points from the term. First, in response to the question about intercultural communication and what it means to me, I can say that while I thought I was pretty competent in my intercultural communication skills, the course has helped me pause and think about my competence and where I might make improvements. I really appreciate learning the intercultural praxis model as a tool to reflect and analyze intercultural differences and how I might address and rethink those situations. The purposeful approach is more comprehensive and it allows me to think about my communication skills in a deeper way. For example, while I feel that my personality lends itself to inquiry, the praxis model helps me think about how I might be more open-minded when I look at a situation or an experience. The point to suspend judgment is something I will need to practice more purposely. We all come to these situations with our own cultural identity, our own upbringing, and creates our own lens, if you will, to any given interaction with someone. So I really think you have to take pause and recognize that we are all different, and because of those past experiences, we automatically enter into a situation or a communication with someone with some predisposed framing. So that leads me to the next access point, which is framing. I also learned that I can shift my perspective in terms of framing to include micro, meso, and macro frames. This isn't something I would have probably ever thought of prior to learning about this tool in this course. In terms of positioning, I did not think of all the aspects of positioning, so this course really helped me broaden that idea. What comes to mind specifically is the power distance and how that shapes communication. As for dialogue, I appreciate the open dialogue we had in the course discussion. I really enjoyed that part of the course and posting on the discussion board and hearing everyone's very different ideas and different examples. I really learned from listening to those perspectives, and I love hearing the different aspects of people's experiences in the course from my peers. Their comments help me think about some of the things that I'm doing in my communication that I may want to alter and help me be a better communicator. A better and more competent communicator is what I ultimately want to achieve in terms of professional and personal skills, and it's a good example of the final part of the praxis model, which is reflecting and then action. My intent is that in learning more about the purposeful efforts to listen, learn, and appreciate our differences will help me become more engaged in strengthening relationship bonds and improve communication so as to eliminate disparities, or at least help me be a catalyst for change as it relates to those disparities. Secondly, I intend to apply the praxis model in my communication going forward as a tool to help me more deeply reflect on a situation or a relationship in an effort to act in a more adaptive way that is more inclusive of cultural differences. Thirdly, I really appreciate my international peers in this course and their accounts of these communication principles from their perspective. We spent some time discussing collectivist and individualistic societies and having an educational experience where we can openly discuss those differences in an honest and non-judgmental way was really helpful. I really thought quite a lot of how important it is to recognize that these differences are essential in business and in personal interactions as we adapt to a world with fewer boundaries due to globalization. What comes to mind most specifically is the case scenario that was discussed in Chapter 5, in which they hired an intercultural communication consultant to work with a team that was made up of Chinese and U.S. peers working on a project together. I really made me think about how important it is to understand these core differences in culture as we move forward in this global society, and how important it is for us to have open communication and help us understand how we approach situations differently and how we can use those differences to make us a stronger collective team rather than cause frustration. Fourthly, I would tell my 10-year-old self to be open-minded and willing to accept people without judgment. To know that differences in culture may lead to miscommunication and frustration on occasion is important. When you realize that it's due to social constructs and that it's up to me to decide how to react to any situation and to educate myself on the cultural differences, as they relate to not only ethnicity or race, but also gender and class, can really help avoid miscommunication and make the most of building strong, mutually beneficial relationships. Early on in the course, I talked a lot about my experiences with Native populations, particularly in White Earth, where we had visited this last year with some students. And one of the things that the Native persons that we met on the reservation talked about more than one occasion was this concept of Indian time. So to me, I think this is kind of important to understand that in cultures, time is viewed in a very different way. In Western culture, being on time is really valued, and it's respectful of the other person. Means in Western culture that you value and honor their time, and you know that they're as important as you when you're on time. What I learned from the Native population about this concept was that it's really kind of a spiritual concept, that if you are not there and not present, late, if you will, that you weren't supposed to be there, that in Indian time things happen for a reason, and very it's intended by the Creator that you're supposed to be there at this very moment. So that's the intention of Indian time. So if someone's not there at the start of a meeting, it was because they weren't intended to be there at the start of the meeting. This is a very different concept than what we perceive in our Western framework of what time means. So I think when you think of those kinds of things outside of the lens that I come to the table with, I think it's important to avoid frustrations, to understand that it's not meant as disrespectful, that it's part of their core belief system of creationist stories, if you will, even. So I really appreciate knowing those kinds of things, and I think that would really help knowing about how different things are perceived so differently around the world by various populations based on our own cultural identity, and just to be open to that and not add that layer of judgment. Very important in being a good communicator. Lastly, I want to encourage students to take this class. I've learned a lot, and I really enjoyed Professor Bell's enthusiasm and efforts to push me out of my comfort zone and embrace new media skills. I have to be honest, when I first heard that I was going to have to do a vlog, post something on YouTube, I was terrified. I'm not a social media native. I grew up in a time when computers were just not the norm. Certainly social media wasn't the norm, and to put myself out there in such a way seemed daunting to me. I almost thought maybe I should drop the class, but I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad that I took the challenge, that I got out of my comfort zone, and that I'm posting yet again another vlog to YouTube that I probably will be horrified watching later, but I do appreciate the opportunity to apply and learn new skills. I'd also tell the students to be prepared to read, to listen, and to learn. This course requires some effort, and it's really worth it. You'll absolutely leave the course knowing that you grew as a student. And I want to thank Professor Bell for giving me the opportunity to learn more about myself, more about others, and to hopefully go forward being a catalyst of change in terms of communication skills and helping be a better communicator across the board. Thank you.